Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I want to welcome you to the COMTO and WTS reception celebrating Debra A. Johnson as RTD's new General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. So we thank you for being with us virtually, here to welcome her to her new home in Colorado. A few things before we get started. This event is being recorded and having your video on is optional. All attendees are muted throughout the duration of our presentations and speakers, but if you have comments and questions, please use that chat feature and we will either get to your question during the Q&A portion of our event and we will record all your comments. Feel free to use the Zoom background that was sent out with your event information if you do feel so inclined to have your video on. I would now like to introduce you all to Carla Romero Perez, tonight's reception moderator. Ms. Perez is a Denver native and has a BA from CSU and a master's in public management from the University of Maryland, College Park, that has guided her in her over 30 years of experience. Carla serves on the COMTO Colorado Board of Directors and the WTS Executive Advisory Committee. She is a founding member of WTS Colorado, the WTS Woman of the Year from 2007, and is the past president of Move Colorado. Carla?
Welcome everyone to tonight's evening. This is the first jointly hosted COMTO Colorado and WTS event, and we are excited to have you join us this evening for what is sure to be a uniquely insightful event. My name is Carla Perez, and I will serve as your moderator this evening. I'm a strategic consultant with HDR, but I also serve as COMTO Colorado's on the board of directors and with WTS's Executive Advisory Committee. And I believe strongly in the benefits of both these organizations. Let me quickly run through the agenda for the evening. We will start with an introduction from the leaders of both COMTO Colorado and WTS. They will then jointly introduce our guest speaker, Debra Johnson, the new General Manager and CEO for RTD, and ask her a series of thought-provoking questions. We will ask that you, if you have any questions that you are interested in asking Ms. Johnson, that you type those into the chat, and we'll work to get those into the queue. After the interview, we hope you'll stay with us and participate in breakout sessions for some networking and brainstorming for a few welcome to Colorado suggestions for Debra as she makes Colorado her new home. Think of this as our collective gift to her. Be thinking of your best of Colorado to share with Debra, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Eulois Cleckley and Malinda Reese. Ladies first. Malinda Reese is the current WTS Colorado Chapter President and has been a member of WTS for 7 years. WTS is an international organization dedicated to the professional advancement of women in transportation. And the WTS Colorado chapter has hundreds of members committed to the excellence within the transportation sector. The chapter is dedicated to inspiring and empowering professionals with the latest information and innovations. Malinda also serves as Deputy Colorado Lead at Apex Design, a consort company. Now, Eulois Cleckley. In June of 2020, Eulois was unanimously elected to serve as the president for COMTO Colorado, a national nonprofit organization established to provide a forum for minority professionals in the transportation industry. Inspired by the speech, "What is Your Blueprint?" by the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Eulois seeks to elevate COMTO's platform while adding value to its members using the 4 inspirational pillars: build, organize, learn, and earn. Eulois also serves as Executive Director for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure for the City and County of Denver. Now, let me hand it over to Eulois and Malinda for an informative conversation with Debra Johnson.
All right, thank you, Carla. I appreciate it very much. And Malinda, do you want to go first? I give a little plug for WTS, and then I'll follow behind you with the plug for COMTO.
Sure, thanks, Eulois. So WTS to me has been such an amazing organization to be a part of. providing networking and helping make connections throughout our industry. I participated in WTS mentorship program years ago, and it was so beneficial. I'd highly recommend it, and our applications are actually now open for this year's program. And I'm just so honored to be a part of an organization that's encouraging women leaders through all stages of the transportation industry, all the way down from elementary school with our Transportation U program, our student chapter, our young professionals, and now our executive advisory committee. So there's always a place. If you are interested in getting involved, please feel free to reach out.
All right, great. Thanks, Malinda. And again, as Carla mentioned, I'm Eulois Cleckley, current chapter president of COMTO Colorado, and I've been honored to be placed in that position to lead this longstanding organization that's focused on really advancing employment, career, and contractual opportunities for small, minority, and women-owned businesses, and then also really providing opportunities for individual professionals in the transportation industry to maximize their potential and really have full participation in this nation's economy. And so as mentioned before, our specific chapter in Colorado is focused on 4 pillars where we really help build, organize, learn, and earn all of our members and all of the businesses that are part of COMTO Colorado to have a great and long-standing transportation career. And so we have a lot of great momentum, a lot of excitement behind all of our activities over the past few months, and looking forward to this being even such a great and wonderful partnership with WTS to further exemplify what's important about both of our organizations, but also advance the mission and the vision of COMTO and ensure that we're providing value for all of our members. And so if you're interested, there's a multiplicity of ways to be involved. We do have a general membership meetings every third Thursday, and we also have opportunities for people to be involved in some of our other special events. And so it's a great organization. If you've not heard of it, please Google it, Conference of Minority Transportation Officials. And then, of course, Google the COMTO Colorado chapter so you can learn about all the great and wonderful activities that we have on tap for the next year. So with no further ado, I would like to start the introduction with a brief synopsis and summary of Debra A. Johnson. And so Debra is a person in the people business, a transit executive guided by the knowledge that her decision-making has direct bearing on the public's ability to make connections that benefit their lives. Her public transportation journey began as a child in Fresno, California, and encompasses more than a quarter century of leadership experience honed at some of the largest transit agencies in the United States and in the San Francisco Bay Area and Washington, D.C. and Southern California. Johnson was selected as general manager and CEO of RTD by the agency's board of directors on August 25th of 2020. And she carries top responsibility for RTD's budget, capital projects, and service delivery, which includes bus, light rail, and commuter rail options across the Denver metro region. Malinda?
So Johnson joined RTD from Long Beach Transit, where she served as Deputy CEO of the Southern California Agency from May 2014 to October 2020. Prior to that, Johnson held executive positions at the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, LA Metro, the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, SFMTA, and Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, WMATA. She moved into public sector service after beginning her transportation career in the private sector in the Bay Area. Johnson holds a master's degree in public administration from California State University Hayward, now CSU East Bay, and a bachelor's degree in international relations from the University of California, Davis. She is a proud alumna of civic leadership programs in San Francisco and Long Beach, as well as the Eno Center for Transportation's Executive Development Program. Ladies and gentlemen, Debra Johnson.
All right. You can hear that rounding applause, Ms. Johnson. All right, very good. So let's kick this off. We have about 30 minutes for this particular portion of the agenda. And Ms. Johnson, I'll start off with one question that really references your background and your vast experience here. You've held a variety of positions throughout the years. What do you look for in a leadership role or opportunity? And then, as we've mentioned, between WTS and COMTO, we were really focused on building up our professional base here in the industry. So as a part of how you answer this question, for our younger audience members that are looking for guidance for their career paths, what tips and what things have you been able to assess over the many positions that you've held in your career?
Thank you so much. And first and foremost, I want to thank you, Eulois, and you, Malinda, for the opportunity to be in this forum and greet all of you. I greatly appreciate the warm welcome to the greater Denver area and to Colorado. I have been a very involved member of COMTO as well as WTS, at least for 20 years, and have been members in a multitude of chapters in every city in which I've resided. So I wanted to say thank you first and foremost. In relationship to the question you've asked, what leads me to these different positions? And if anything, I would say it's always been, it's a challenge. I pride myself on being an evergreen learner. I am one that would always raise my hand and lean into a problem. And for me, I find great joy in that because I want to leverage the experience that I have gained throughout my professional development as well as personal development. And it's important to me to give back. I think it's often important to do that because being in this space, oftentimes when I was coming up in this transportation realm, I did not see people that looked like me. And so I say this often, it was important for me to be the voice of those standing at the bus stop to ensure that they had a voice when it came to the boardroom. So it's basically having an empathetic ear, being able to engage with employees, because they are the heartbeat of the organization. And without them, there's no need for me. But more specifically, being a person in the people business, without our customers, there's no need for any of us. So I pride myself on being one that is very participatory in the sense of engaging with employees, to have that empathetic ear, to have a close understanding of what it is that we're aspiring to do each and every day. And as it relates to people coming up within this organization, one thing that I have found to be advantageous that has allowed me to move around is when you think about what your goal is and what you're aspiring to do, it's very analogous to that as a jungle gym. It's not a clear ascension to whatever top you may view that to be. Sometimes you have to step to the left, step to the right, step to the back to go forward. And by doing that and leaning into discussions and situations, it's enabled me to not only grow personally, but professionally. And I feel that it's incumbent upon me to give back. And that's why I enjoy being part of industry-based associations such as this, especially when I can impart some level of wisdom that I have gained through my kitchen cabinet. And I gotta say, I scroll through this, I see people on this virtual platform that I worked at a multitude of different organizations, COMTO family, WTS, folks that I worked with or knew of at BART. So I want to say, hey, y'all.
Amazing. Thank you, Debra. I love that jungle gym analogy. So next question is, could you talk a little bit about the ways you have advocated for change in the industry, particularly regarding gender and race equity? What have been some of the successes or some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
Well, I think if anything, oftentimes being a woman in a space where I'm the only one, it's basically ensuring that your voice is heard. And what's really telling about that is, I think if anything, being in this space, it's just unfamiliarity with people that we customarily engage with. So in the transportation space, you're accustomed to seeing a man. And so when you see a woman, it's like, oh, what is she doing here? I don't think that's any malice or ill intent on the individual's part by making an assumption. It's just what it has been. So collectively, it's important that we work towards what could be. And so in doing so, I always challenge people to have those conversations by asking a lot of questions. It's not to diminish what they bring to the table, but it's basically encouraging those difficult conversations about, why are you making an assumption I'm in X position, whatever it is? And let me qualify my statement by saying, no matter what role one plays in the organization, I equate it to being analogous to a puzzle. There may be pieces of a puzzle that are larger than others, but that box top cover photograph would not be complete if every piece of the puzzle wasn't assembled. So we need to ensure that we value the contributions that others are bringing to the table. And if you don't understand what those are, then take the opportunity to engage in dialogue to learn about what it is that they're bringing full circle. I can share with you one thing that resonated with me some time ago when I was at LA Metro and I was serving there as the interim chief operations officer while I had been the deputy chief operations officer. And I had gone out to one of the many divisions. And through the course of engagement, as I said, I go out and I make it a point to go to the different divisions to meet frontline employees. There was a young woman who happened to be a woman of color, and two of my direct reports, one being the executive director of transportation and the other being the executive director of maintenance. We were walking around and one of the gentlemen said to this woman, "Oh, you need to meet the new chief operations officer." And so me and the other gentleman, we walked up together, and even though my other teammate had said, meet her, she made the assumption it was my subordinate. And so basically, after having a conversation with this young woman, she had never seen anybody in that position that looked like me. So as we talk about equality and gender, it's important that we make ourselves visible. It's important that we ensure that we provide opportunities to engage and educate others that they too can be in these positions, because in the absence of being aware, in the absence of information, people make assumptions and assume that that's not plausible for them. So as we talk about this, it's sometimes forging your way in and taking a seat at the table. And as Shirley Chisholm said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring your folding chair and sit there yourself. And so that's what I do. And some people aren't comfortable with it, but I'm very secure in who I am and what I bring to the table. So as women specifically, let's not sell ourselves short and recognize that you have a voice and make it heard. And if somebody interrupts you, take the lesson you clearly saw from Vice President Kamala Harris. Let them know you are speaking and demand that you be heard.
Excellent. Excellent. And we're glad that you're here and glad that you have that perspective here in Denver. So that's awesome. So Ms. Johnson, let me ask you, how would you describe your leadership style? In other words, if somebody were to ask one of your staff about the wonderful leadership traits that Ms. Johnson has, what would they say about you and your leadership style?
Well, if anything, even in my short tenure here, I think that people recognize that I am highly communicative and a participatory leader. I believe it's important that I listen more than I speak, because right now I'm in a place where I don't know what I don't know. But engaging in dialogue and being able to probe when you're having a conversation and ask questions, you're able to glean a lot of information you would have never known that you needed to seek out. Something else that's important to me about my leadership style, I have to lead by example. So if I ask you to do something, if I ask you to be accountable, trust and believe I am going to be the first that exhibits that. And then more importantly, as it relates to who I am and what I do, I believe it's imperative that I foster a work environment where people want to do their ultimate best. And that's by ensuring that they know they're valued. It's about me stepping out of my comfort zone, leaving this office, going out to the divisions, writing the system, being out there at 4 a.m., because not everybody in this industry works from 8 to 5. And I shouldn't have the expectation that they need to come to me. I need to go to them, as there's one of me and there's a lot more of them. And it's easier for me to traverse our transportation network and be able to engage. And I think if anything else, it's really being able to communicate and inform. I'm not one that feels as if no one can ask me a question because I'm sitting here and they may be sitting somewhere else. It's more or less being sure that you can actually ask a question. And if I can't disclose something, I am going to convey that and explain to you why. I am open to hear suggestions because I believe in continuous improvement. As long as no one's disrespectful, uses profanity, I'm willing to engage, because I believe you don't have to be disagreeable when you disagree. And I may not always like what I hear, but oftentimes what I learn is I can get a couple of nuggets from that, which probably is going to help my growth. Because as I said, I pride myself on being an evergreen learner, and each and every day I can learn something about myself that I can leverage and be a stronger leader for the members of the Regional Transportation District.
Lost her for a second.
If she
Debra?
comes back in a minute.
Yeah. So I see that the former GM and CEO Dave Genova on. You didn't pull the plug in her office, did you, Dave?
I'll just say, if anybody has, while we're waiting for Debra to get back on, if anybody does have any questions later on, if you want to, that we hope to be able to add into the program, please type your questions in the chat. I see a couple of people have done that already, but please make sure you get your question in. Oh, it looks like we lost her entirely. Hopefully she's
Yeah.
logging back.
So to make best use of time while she gets on, I think there's one question that's in the chat that's interesting that we'll definitely ask, which is Debra's take on the new administration with Pete Buttigieg in office, as well as the most recent announcement that came out today with all of the leadership at the USDOT. And so I don't know about all of you, but I'm very excited about those specific appointees to the various agencies. I think there's a real sea change that's going to take place at the national level that's really going to help out not only state of Colorado, but the Denver region as a whole. So I'll be curious, so we can at least have a group discussion around that question until she gets back. Malinda, what do you think about the change in administration and the like?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is potential for quite a bit of funding resources now in transit, and I think that, or with transportation in general, and I think that is exciting to see, and look forward to kind of seeing how it actually plays out as we move forward. Carla, do you have thoughts on that?
I always have thoughts on that. So I'm also excited that we have a couple of people from Colorado, or that have been with our agencies in Colorado, that are now part of the new administration as well. I did see that Sophie Schulman did get a position with USDOT, along with, what's his name, Putman. Not sure the first name. I was gonna say
And then for COMTO Colorado, actually, Brad Mims is going to be the deputy, I believe, administrator for FAA. So that's just a signal to the importance of this organization and the leadership that has occurred over the years. He's currently the, I believe, the board chair for COMTO. So it's good stuff. Ms. Johnson, I see that you're back.
Yeah, that's weird. And actually, Brad Mims is the president and CEO of COMTO. I heard you guys talking, but you couldn't see me. So yes, it's very exciting. I actually had an opportunity to exchange some text messages with him, offering him congratulatory wishes. So it's awesome.
Nice. Well, now that we have you back, I think we can, appreciate your thoughts on the leadership style. I think anything else you want to add that, I'm not sure if you know where you cut off, but
I'm not certain where I cut off. I was talking and so you guys just couldn't see me, but I could hear you.
Yeah, well, we heard wonderful things about your leadership style. So I'll jump into the next question that I think. So you've already touched on this a little bit, but how have groups such as COMTO and WTS played a role in your success? How would you value your network and networking organizations like us?
Well, I think it's really imperative. It's a safe space. I have, over the years, over my 20+ years of involvement with both associations, have developed some lifelong friendships. I would say I have been able to acquire members to my kitchen cabinet when I'm having, issues or want to have a safe place where I can bounce ideas off of people that recognize the situation in which I'm in. I've leveraged my brothers and sisters in these organizations. And so as relates to where we're going as well, individuals within this space have a collective understanding. There's the networking opportunities. I think there's great benefit in reaching back and actually bringing people up through the association and enticing them to go on for greater opportunities. I think the leadership programs, the mentoring, I heard you mention that, Malinda, when I was a member of WTS, I remember I was mentoring some students from UC Berkeley through COMTO, the Emerging Leaders Program. When we had that, I still keep in touch with a couple of individuals whom I met during one of those sessions where she checks in, and I use the analogy about the jungle gym that came from the book Lean In, which, you know, Sheryl Sandberg. So all of those things I find to be very enriching for me. And it really helps to be in a space when we talk about different adversities that we may face as being women, as being people of color, you know, in this space just holistically, it's been of tremendous help. So I know that I'm sort of rambling now as I think about it, because it's really hard to qualify the importance that it has had for me during the course of my life. It has enabled me just to have more or less indirect mentoring and mentee opportunities as well. And I actually mentioned, you know, Brad Mims. That's an individual when I was going through this process who, you know, reached out. And other people, there's so many people to name that have basically been of great help to me. And it's been reciprocal through this organization, these organizations, since there's two.
Wonderful, wonderful. So a quick question. I mean, there's many of us who are on the line today, but I think we would all like to ask the question: how can we support you? How can COMTO and WTS support you? But how can all of the other stakeholders that have an interest in your success support you moving forward?
Well, thank you very much for that. I think if anything is rallying around one another. I mean, we're all in the transportation space. And be it aviation, maritime, you know, transit, we're all about moving people and moving things, or aviation for that matter. And I think basically as we go through the trials and tribulations, quite naturally, we're not going to please everybody. And I know that coming into this situation, and I'd rather be respected than liked. I believe it's basically being forthright and having an understanding. And how you all can help me, especially being the new kid on the block, is helping me leverage those introductions and relationships, you know, making yourselves available should I need to get with a specific individual, or having a backdrop on what was. It's important to have context for me going in, because I may know transportation, but I do not know this metropolitan area. And with any environment, there's always some cultural attributes that I may not be cognizant of. And while I may have good intentions, I just may not know where the landmines are. So it's navigating untraveled terrain from my perspective that I could use assistance with. And sometimes once we can, you know, be out of this virtual space, perhaps just a glass of fermented grape juice. That's one of my faves.
That sounds wonderful. I can't wait until we can meet in person again with a couple glasses of wine. I think this is our last pre-scripted question, and then I think Carla will bring us into some of the questions from the chat. So what goals have you set for RTD that you'd like to share with this audience today?
Well, if anything, let me explain how I'm coming full circle in relationship to what I have responded to via the questions. So recognizing I'm coming into this space, and while I've worked at, this is my 7th transit agency, if you've seen one transit agency, you've seen one transit agency, because whether it's intentional or a happenstance, there is a culture that is ingrained within the organization. And so coming in, there may be processes and ways of doing things of which I'm unfamiliar. So what I have been doing is taking the time to meet with a multitude of different individuals, and I'm asking them 5 general questions. And they're all the same, but they're coming from a diverse group of individuals. ranging from frontline employees to members of the senior leadership team to our former board in 2020 to the current board in 2021, through legislators and key stakeholders. And what I'm doing is basically going through these series of questions, and I've met probably in those one-on-one sessions, I've had in excess of 100 meetings. And there's some commonalities and there's some themes. And what I do know right now, which would be a benefit for this organization, is to create alignment around what it is we're striving to do, because there's been disparate responses about what our priorities are. And if you have several priorities, it means you have no priorities. So as we look to what our North Star is from an aspirational point of what the vision should be and what our core mission is, it's basically deducing where we need to go. So with that as the backdrop, I can tell you preliminarily, we need to really focus on, our financial health, because that is embedded in everything we do. Also, everybody has been talking about, oh, what are we going to do post-pandemic? We need to, lower fares. We need to get our ridership back. We need to step back and think collectively about how do we leverage a ridership growth action plan, because what works for one customer segment may not work for all customer segments. So I'm looking at it through a design thinking aspect, where first you have to empathize with the end user and then basically be able to ascertain and define what the issue is you're trying to solve, get with people and ideate, right? And then come up with a prototype, test it, and figure out what works. So having that all in one space, working in tandem with the board and the senior leadership team, so we all have an understanding collectively, what is that aspirational goal, but then how do we all collectively contribute to it, because we are all individuals that make up the organization, and everybody has an accountable role in achieving our core mission. But we need to really focus on what that is. So to sum up what I said, financial health going forward, our ridership aspect is very important. And from that, there are the different tactics that you hear people talking about. And since our core business is about moving people, sure, we have capital projects, but eventually those capital projects come full circle and are integrated into our core transit system. So when you think about all those things compounded, we get back to, being dedicated to connecting communities, moving people, and making everyday life better.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. I think this concludes our canned questions. I know we have some questions here in the chat. I think, Carla, you're gonna take it over from here.
Yeah, we've had some great questions coming through. So Debra, if you can lend yourself to a couple more. There's a lot of things that people want to know. So Gabe Yesho, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked this question. RTD is well known for supporting DBE, SBE, WBE, minority-owned businesses. Please describe how you are going to support minority-owned businesses.
So how are we going to support them? RTD is committed to supporting small business and all the weebies, and I don't see that changing from any facet. So when we look and we have projects, we basically, want to ensure that we're creating a level playing field, and working in conjunction with my team, want to leverage that going forward. I see Zami Silva on the call, who was our senior manager of civil rights, and she and I have already talked about hosting a session where I'm able to meet some of the small businesses and minority-owned businesses, so I can garner a better understanding what their viewpoints are collectively on how RTD can collaborate and be a partner. So it gets back to what I said before, with me being in this space, actually being able to garner an understanding of what it is that the businesses are seeking, so we can work collaboratively to see how we can effectuate that going forward.
Thank you. Another good one here from Andy Mountain, and this is relative to some remarks that you had made recently in Boulder regarding the Northwest Rail. Forgive me. Can you give us a little bit of perspective on your thoughts on Northwest Rail, and have you dealt with similar experiences in California where the public is promised something and then the financial realities cause you to fall short?
Okay, well,
promises.
Thank you very much, Carla. And just to qualify my remarks that I made, because I've said this from the recruitment process on up to every forum that I've been in. And when we were talking about Northwest Rail, what I said specifically is at this point in time, we don't have viable funding for the project. And I had asked the question relative to leveraging the federal government under new rail starts for a full funding grant agreement. And that led me to deduce that there wasn't ridership there. So we are collectively committed, RTD, in providing viable transportation solutions and recognizing that when this project came to be back in 2002, when it was talked about, and then on the ballot in 2004, there were different circumstances. So in the context of my discussion, I said that we have to be open to looking at different options and partnerships. That doesn't mean that Northwest Rail can't come to fruition. What I was saying was we need to look at different aspects and ensuring that we can bring that full circle. So as it relates to any similar experience that I've had in California where public promises fell short of financial realities, I mean, wow, high-speed rail in California, that's something in and of itself. But specifically the projects that I had been involved with, being the BART extension to the San Francisco airport and the other extensions, those were all done through a collaborative effort. There were HAFs and sales tax measures passed. There was jurisdictional support, and they qualified for full funding grant agreements. And the same as related to the Silicon Valley Rapid Transit Corridor project I worked on, i.e. BART to San Jose, which just opened in June, a couple of stations. So I think it was done in a different manner whereby we partnered with the federal government from my experience. And I haven't been part of a major capital project that was solely done with local and regional funds. And what lessons can be learned from the situation? I see that. I think if anything is, we have to recognize, we have to be forthright, and I pride myself on being a servant leader, and it's managing expectations. And throughout the course of my career, one thing is certain, I can't foresee what's going to happen. The only thing that I'm in control of is my word. So I pride myself on being truthful. If I don't know something's going to come to fruition, I will state that and manage expectations by saying, here we are. We may not have all the funding. We're able to do X. We're not able to do Y at this point in time, but we can work collectively. And I just find from my own personal experience, and this has nothing to do with fast track. So let me qualify. The question is, what is my experience in working on projects and how do I handle those situations? So I want to be clear because oftentimes assumptions are made about what I'm saying. So I want to qualify that I'm speaking specifically as it relates to my experience, that I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And so I'm intentional with my words. And that's something that I have found to be advantageous. That has yielded great benefit to me as I've been in this space.
Well, we all appreciate your honesty and your openness and your willingness to explore a lot of these issues that I think we've been dealing with for a long time as it relates to either the shortfalls in funding or ridership or how it comes together. So I hope we all are giving each other the space to be able to have those conversations and be collaborative. Another question that came into play here was talking about the new administration. So there's a question on your thoughts on Pete Buttigieg as the new administrator, or secretary, I should say. And then a lot of the leadership positions look like they're coming from local governments. So any thoughts with regards to how this is all coming together with the Biden administration?
Yeah, so thank you very much. As it relates to, and I will say Secretary Buttigieg, because it's almost certain that he'll be confirmed. I think if anything that he provides a perspective that will enable us as people within these localities to benefit from. And what I mean by that is he's coming in looking through the lens of a mayor's eye, recognizing the value of transportation dollars, recognizing the need for infrastructure as relates to jurisdictions. So I think that will be helpful. As it relates to other people in positions, as we look at Nuria Fernandez, being the deputy FTA administrator and assumably, you know, the FTA administrator if she is nominated and confirmed, which is anticipated to be. Nuria has a plethora of experience as relates to running an agency, working at the national level, recognizing that she was the deputy FTA administrator in the Clinton era, and, you know, followed Gordon Linton when he was FTA administrator. So she brings hands-on experience as to what we are experiencing collectively when we talk about the need for investment in transportation and infrastructure, as we look at the need for a reauthorization bill. So I remain optimistically hopeful as we go forward, and more so recognizing that the current administration, you know, basically values public transport. And how can we not, you know, no disrespect intended to the president, but hey, he's known as Amtrak Joe. And he actually wanted to take the train the other night to go to DC, and the Secret Service wouldn't allow him to. So having somebody that uses, you know, vast modes of transport, I think is of great benefit to all of us. So those are my thoughts initially as relates to the administration, and recognizing that they're not going to be the end all be all, and they're not going to be the panacea that cures all of our ailments. But I do think basically having individuals that are in the space, and including, you know, our vice president as well, having an understanding with her being, you know, reared in the San Francisco Bay Area, with her being the district attorney in San Francisco. I had the opportunity to work in the city the same time she did. She utilized Muni. She knows about the BART system. So all of these different advantages, I think, really comes into play, especially when you look at the vast populations that are transit dependent. And we're talking about the need to level the playing field, and we're talking about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think this administration has that at the forefront, and it's going to be interwoven into everything that they do going forward.
Well, I think we can all be real excited about the fact that the list of appointments that are starting to be identified include people that we know, people
Right.
that you know, which will, I think, be very helpful to you in the work that you do at RTD, to the RTD board, and to our community in Denver and to Colorado as a whole. So I think it's all good for Colorado. I'm going to try to switch over maybe a little bit here because we do have more program. So I want to thank Debra and Eulois and Malinda for a great conversation, and obviously sharing all your thoughts and your perspectives, your insights on leaderships with our collective membership. I feel like I know you a little better, didn't really know you until today. So obviously that's very, hopefully everybody else who's participating here is starting to feel that way as well. We know you're no stranger to WTS and to COMTO, so we welcome you. We collectively welcome you to our Colorado chapters.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to switch a little bit because as attendees, it is now your turn to give something back to Debra. A collective welcome to Colorado by sharing with Debra what you love most about our state. We are going to send you into breakout rooms for a bit of networking and brainstorming on the best of what Colorado has to offer. So you should have seen some of this in your invite. As you go into the breakout rooms, you're going to have about 5 minutes to think about your go-to favorites, whether they be places, restaurants, services, activities, whatever they happen to be. And place you're going to need to pick somebody to be your scribe. And if you would write those things down and send them in an email. So the email should be listed there as you see on the board here. And if you can send those back to us, I think it would be great. It would be a great way for Debra to get a sense of, it'll give you, Debra, that insight that you were looking for, not just to people, but the places and what makes us feel so special about those things that we love about Colorado. So I'm going to hand it back over to Kara, and I think we're going to break people up into groups. But thank you again, Debra and Eulois and Malinda. I think this was a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Well, hopefully that was a lot of fun for everybody. It's always nice, I think, to have those kind of conversations, and you always take little notes down yourself to figure out what it is that you may want to do based on what other people's suggestion was. So I just want to say thank you for joining WTS and COMTO Colorado for this evening and helping to provide a warm welcome to Colorado for Debra Johnson. We're very excited to have you here, and with the amount of participation that we had tonight, we can clearly tell that others were happy to have that opportunity to meet you. I want to thank CIG for assisting with the Zoom facilitation and Kara and Lucy's work on that. We look forward to the day when we can do events in person and collectively raise a glass to our newest transportation leader. So I would just say good night and stay healthy and stay safe.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks.